By the time the sea finally went quiet, I'd already decided I was done with it for the day. I've been on shift since dawn, climbing up and down rusted ladders at the desal plant, clearing filters full of jellyfish, listening to pumps howl through concrete like caged animals. When I got home, the home part wasn't exactly restful either. Living on a floating house tied up in a small harbor sounds romantic until you're the one who has to knock barnacles off the pontoons and fight the damp in every drawer. By evening, though, Sandra had our daughter below deck, reading something about mermaids in her soft bedtime voice. The little cabin glowed warm through the porthole. I finally let myself breathe a bit. I sat out on the stern deck with a cold beer, bare feet on the damp planks, the boat rocking gently in its berth. The harbor was unusually calm. No wind, just the gentle clink of rigging from the sailboats nearby and the soft slap of brackish water against hulls. Out toward the mouth of the harbor, the sky was clear and full of stars. Out here, away from the city glow, they came through sharp and indifferent. Tonight, they were especially bright, reflected in the black mirror of the water, like there were two skies stacked on top of each other. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn moaned once and then died away. I tasted salt and stale beer on my tongue and let my shoulders slump for the first time all day. Then a scream tore across the harbor. A woman's scream. Raw. Panicked. Not that drunk party shriek you hear on summer weekends. It bounced off the concrete quays and hulls, got tangled up in the masts, and landed right in my spine. I jerked up in my chair, beer sloshing over my hand. It sounded close, maybe the public pier, maybe one of the boats along our row. I turned, squinting past the weak yellow halos of the dock lights. That's when I saw him. A man, maybe 40 meters away, sprinting along the floating dock that paralleled ours. At first, I thought he'd climbed off one of the fishing boats drunk, but the way he moved wasn't right. He was running like something was chasing him, or like he was trying to outrun his own shadow. Barefoot, the slap of his soles on wet wood carried across the still water. He was stripped to the waist, skin slick and shining, as if he'd just crawled out of the bay. He veered suddenly and crashed full speed into the locked door of a small charter office built on the pier. The impact shook the flimsy structure. I heard the hollow boom of metal, the rattle of glass. He bounced off, staggered sideways, nearly went over the edge into the black water, then righted himself and ran again. No hosetashchen. No ouch, fuck that hurt. Just pure forward. I pushed up out of the cheap plastic chair, my beer bottle dangling in my hand. Hey, I shouted across the water. You okay, man? He either didn't hear or didn't care. He skidded on algae-slick planks, caught himself with a hand on a cleat, then tore down the finger dock that led straight past our place. His head snapped up when he saw me on the stern. No scanning, no confusión. He locked on me like a target, and then he sprinted straight for my boat. What the hell? My voice dried up halfway. I stepped forward, another hay forming on my tongue. He hit the gangplank, hard, the whole thing flexing with a rubbery groan. Up close I saw details I didn't want to see. Mud and blood streaked his bare legs. His pajama pants, yeah, actual plaid pajama pants, soaked and shredded, clung to his thighs. Seaweed trailed off one ankle like a green rope. His feet were torn to hell, skin hanging off in ribbons. He looked like someone had dragged him across the seabed. He didn't slow down. He came pounding down the narrow side deck toward me, shoulders pumping, face a twisted mask of blood and something worse. What the hell's wrong with you, man? I yelled, backing up. You high? Get the fuck off my. He lunged. The metal railing dug into my spine as I reflexively retreated. Up close, his face wasn't just bloody, it was broken. A long gash split his forehead, a curtain of red pouring down over his eyes into his open mouth. Splinters of wood, or maybe glass, stuck out his cheeks. His eyes rolled white and wild in the mess. He smelled like harbor mud and diesel and copper. There was no hesitation in him, no flinch, just a straight, insane tackle. Instinct took over. I swung the beer bottle with everything I had. Glass exploded against his skull. The bottle burst into a spray of brown shards and foam. The impact jarred my arm all the way to the shoulder. The man went down like a sack of wet laundry, face first onto the deck. For a second, I thought I'd killed him. Then he pushed himself up, just like that. His hands slipped in his own blood, fingers squealing against the wet fiberglass. But he shoved himself to his knees, then to his feet, body wobbling but relentless. Beer glass jutted from his cheek and brow like little jagged islands. A long sliver stuck out of his lip, making his mouth twitch in a grotesque half-smile. He stepped forward. I heard the crunch of glass under his bare feet as he put weight on them and didn't so much as wince. Something in my gut went ice cold. Jeremy? What was that? Sandra's muffled voice floated up from the cabin, right as the man charged again. Stay below. I barked without looking back. Stay with Lily. He slammed into me. We crashed backward, my shoulder cracking into the doorframe. The flimsy wooden door to the cabin shattered off its latch. We tumbled down the narrow set of steps and hit the tiny living space in a tangle of limbs, smashing into the table, sending a mug skittering across the floor. He was heavy, all loose, wet muscle and bone and weight. He didn't throw punches, not really. His hands kept going for my face. More specifically, my forehead. Over and over, his fingers clawed up, seeking it, even when I jammed my elbow into his ribs or slammed my fist into his nose. I punched him in the jaw so hard my knuckles popped. His head snapped sideways, his eyes rolled back for a heartbeat, like the lights went out. But his body didn't stop. His arms kept flailing, reaching. His legs kicked, trying to get leverage. It was like punching one of those inflatable clown bags from a fair. The top moved. The bottom just kept bouncing back. He scrambled over the coffee table, and we crashed onto the threadbare couch. I managed to plant a foot against his chest and shove him. He toppled backwards, flipped over the back of the couch, hit the opposite wall, then somehow found his feet again. Jesus, Jeremy, what is happening? Sandra screamed from the bottom of the ladder that led to the forward berth. She had Lily clutched her chest, our little girl's face buried in her shirt. Back! I roared, spitting blood. Get back, San. Call the Coast Guard. Lock the hatch. That split-second distraction was all he needed. He surged forward, a bloody, dripping blur in my peripheral vision, and slapped his hand onto my forehead. Skin to skin, palm to bone. His grip was like a brand. It's yours now, he rasped. His teeth were pink and cracked. Blood bubbled between his lips. A shard of my beer bottle glinted from his cheek. Then something broke. Not in the room. In me. Imagine someone jerking the wheel of your car while you're doing 80 on a wet road. That sick, helpless lurch. That is what my brain did inside my skull. The world tilted sideways. The little cabin warped, the walls bowing in like pressure on a hull. A sound boomed in my head. Not a voice, not exactly. More like a low, dull ping. Like a ship's sonar pulse echoing from somewhere far below, but inside my bones. My vision blurred, smeared, then snapped into a strange, too bright focus. And then, I wasn't driving anymore. My muscles went slack and then locked again, but they weren't listening to me. I tried to yank my head back, to tear his hand away, to shout at Sandra to run. My body ignored all of it. I felt my own legs coil under me, and then I was moving. My own hands shoved the bloody man away like he weighed nothing. He crumpled to the floor, limp. I didn't even look to see if he was breathing. My legs drove me back up the broken steps, out through the splintered doorway, onto the swaying rear deck. Cold air hit my face. Harbor air, salt and rot and fuel. I heard Sandra scream my name behind me. Heard Lily crying. Heard wood creak and water slap, and someone on another boat yelling. What's going on over there? None of it mattered. Not to whatever had hold of me. My legs were running before my mind understood we'd started. I vaulted the small gap from our stern to the dock like I'd been doing parkour all my life. My toes barely brushed the slick plank before I was pounding down the pier, breath tearing in and out of lungs I no longer owned. I tried to stop. I swear to you I did. I imagined myself digging my heels into the wet wood, grabbing a piling, throwing my weight sideways. Nothing. It was like being trapped behind glass in my own skull. I could see everything, feel everything, smell the harbor, taste blood and beer and metal. But nothing responded. My knees pistoned, feet slapping rhythm on old, waterlogged wood. The harbor lights streaked by in my peripheral vision. Boats bobbed, ropes creaked, water muttered against hulls. My hands pumped in a perfect runner's rhythm. I could feel muscles sliding under skin, my guts bouncing with each impact. Inside, my thoughts were screaming, "Stop! Stop! Stop!" My mouth didn't even open. I tore down the long main dock, past the fishermen's trawlers and weekend sailors. A couple of guys in orange bibs, sitting on overturned buckets getting their last catch, froze mid-motion as I blurred past, barefoot and bleeding. Jeremy, one of them called. "Hey man, you good?" My body didn't even turn its head. The dock ended at the concrete quay. My own feet hit rough, cold concrete and pushed harder, launching me up. I sprinted along the waterfront promenade. To my right, black water slapped at barnacle-crusted pilings. To my left, shuttered seafood restaurants and bait shops hunkered in the dark. Up ahead, the fluorescent sign of the dockside liquor and tackle store glowed ugly and blue, the only bright thing on that side of the harbor. I knew that place, owned by a guy named Mike. Bought beer there 100 times after late shifts. I saw the locked glass door. I knew it was locked. The metal grill was already half pulled down. My brain knew all of that. My legs didn't care. They sprinted harder. No. I whimpered inside my own skull. I hit the door full speed. Bone met glass and aluminum frame with a deep, meaty thump. A shock wave tore through my body. The door shuddered but held. I bounced back, sprawling onto the pavement, vision exploding in ecstatic and white pain. Something warm trickled down my temple. I knew more blood when I felt it. I lay there for half a second, thinking, this is it, this is where it ends, I'll just stay down, someone will help. My body rolled to its knees, then stood. Just like that. My right eye blurred fully this time, a hot stream running into it. The left saw the world in skewed double exposure. Harbor lights smeared, shadows guttering. My joints screamed protest, but my legs reset themselves, adjusted stance, and threw me at the door again. I said, "We're closed," a voice yelled from inside. "Get the hell out of here, you drunk asshole." Through the glass, Mike's silhouette flared in the light. For a heartbeat, my body froze. My hands hung at my sides. I felt the muscles of my shoulders tremble. Did it hesitate? Did whoever was at the controls weigh the option of going through glass, through flesh? Or was it just me, begging hard enough for a tiny pause? I'll never know. Without so much as a twitch of my head toward the owner's voice, my torso twisted and my legs launched me backward, away from the store. Then I spun, bare feet scraping on concrete, and bolted, past the store, past the last of the quayside lights, toward the outer harbor wall, where the city dimmed and the sea took over. I crashed through a plastic trash bin. It bounced away, clattering loudly on the ground, rolling toward the edge. A gull squawked and took off. I hurdled a low chain barrier, clipped it, stumbled, went down on one hand, skin tearing, then popped back up, never slowing. The concrete under my feet gave way to rougher ground. The outer harbor wall, big blocks of stone and concrete, built to take winter storms, loomed ahead. On the other side waited open water, dark and cold and indifferent. There was a maintenance path along the top, narrow and gritty with sand and salt. Nordalings, just a drop into black waves on one side and the silent harbor on the other. My body hit that path and found new gear. Wind picked up the closer we got to the open mouth. Cold, damp. It cut through my sweat-soaked shirt, bit into the split skin of my chest. The taste of salt thickened in my throat. Inside, I'd gone beyond panic to a kind of blank animal terror. My thoughts broke up into small, senseless flashes. Sandra's face, Lily's tiny hands, the sound of that first woman's scream. I knew what was coming. I'd been drunk out here before with some of the guys from the plant. We dared each other to walk the wall during a storm. I knew exactly where the path did that shitty thing. Sloped down steeply for about 40 meters to a lower section. No lights, slick with spray and moss. My legs drove me right at it. No, please. I begged myself in silence. My muscles coiled, and then I was hurtling downhill. The world narrowed to wet concrete and rushing wind and the distant boom of waves smashing against the far side of the wall. My feet slid. My arms windmilled uselessly at my sides because whoever was in charge didn't seem to think balance was worth worrying about. I lost my footing. I went down. Hard. I hit the concrete on my hip, slid, bounced, rolled. Skin tore. My shoulders slammed into something, then my ribs. My head cracked against the edge of a step or a drainage lip. Stars detonated behind my eyes. I flipped sideways, and suddenly I wasn't on the path anymore. I was falling. The edge of the wall whipped by inches from my face. I saw green-black water boiling below. A barnacle-encrusted rock reached up. Then I hit. The impact drove every last bit of air out of my lungs. It was like smack landing on stone, but it wasn't just stone. My side scraped across rough concrete and then plunged in a shock-cold brine. Something sharp sliced along my thigh. I tasted pure sea, thick with oil and metal and rot, flood my nose and mouth. And then everything went dark. Not just the world. Me. I came back like someone had flipped a breaker. No yente drift. No dreams. 1 second. Nothing. Next, my mind yanked fully awake, screaming, as if it needed to catch up with a movie that had been playing without it. I was upright and moving when awareness slammed into me. My lungs burned, my throat rasped, and my legs were pounding again. The air was different now, drier, colder, laced with exhaust instead of fish. I was running along the shoulder of a road. On one side, a low concrete barrier. Beyond that, nothing but darkness and the suggestion of water below, black and glassy. On the other, occasional streaks of headlights howled past, too close, rattling the air. The sound bounced weirdly, echoing off the water in a way I recognized. We were on the causeway, the long, straight bridge that cut across the bay toward the city. Ahead, in the haze of distance, the port city glowed. A smear of sodium yellow and blue LEDs, cranes sticking up like spidery ribs, the occasional flash of a cargo ship's lights sliding between them. I didn't know how long I'd been out. I didn't know how I'd gotten from the base of the harbor wall up to the road. I didn't know how my legs were still fucking moving. All I knew was that inside my skull, I was a wild animal beating against the bars and my body didn't care at all. The sonar sound was back. A slow, regular ping somewhere behind my forehead. Booming, resonant, like an old ship's depth finder. Each one seemed to coincide with a surge in speed, a tightening of tendons. Ping, faster. Ping, harder. I'm going to die, I thought, scraping the words together from the wreckage in my head. It's going to run me under a truck or off the bridge, and I'm going to drown in the goddamn bay like a thrown beer bottle. The city grew closer. The smell changed as we descended off the causeway toward the industrial port. Less salt, more diesel and garbage. A steady hum joined the waves and the wind, the combined sound of generators, ships, and distant traffic. My body hit the first intersection and barely broke stride at the red light. Headlights swept across me. Horns blared. I saw a driver's face flash past, eyes wide, mouth open in a curse I couldn't hear over the rush of air. Bare feet slapped across painted lines and soaked through a puddle formed by a leaking fire hydrant. Cold water splashed on my shins. Somewhere behind us a car, tires screeched. No impact came. My legs didn't even twitch. I barreled down a waterfront road I half recognized. Graffiti-scrawled walls, chain-link fences topped with barbed wire, glimpses of docked ships through gaps. My body weaved automatically around potholes, posts, people. It was like watching parkour videos where the camera is strapped to the idiot's head. In a small plaza by the fish market, a bunch of young people clustered under a flickering streetlight, smoking and laughing. Music tinny from a portable speaker. I shot past them, soaked, bloody, shirt shredded, one boot gone, leaving a trail of red footprints. Holy shit, somebody yelled. Dude, what the? Another voice. Record that, record that. I caught a glimpse of a phone coming up, its little square eye glinting, framing me. For one stupid second, I thought, great, that's gonna be online before I'm even in a body bag. My body didn't even glance over. It just kept running. Through a narrow alley that stank of fish guts and mop water, past stacked plastic crates slick with melted ice, out onto another road, past a small fountain tucked into a courtyard, a round basin choked with moss and coins. Without breaking stride, my legs took me straight through it, water spraying up around my calves in cold sheets. The slapping of my feet turned to splashes for a couple of strides, then back to dry impacts. My pants clung to my skin, heavier now, darker. Up ahead, the waterfront opened into a big square. On one side, the harbor basin, a dark rectangle of water dotted with the reflections of a few anchored yachts and the blinking red eye of a navigation marker. On the other, restaurants and corporate offices with their names in big backlit letters. Right in front of me, dominating the square, was a glass-fronted tower. I'd seen it before from a distance. The Thalassa Center, big oceanography and energy company complex. 12 stories of glass and steel, standing right on the edge of the water like it had pulled itself up from a bay. The front doors were huge slabs of thick glass framed in brushed steel, gleaming under bright spotlights. My body zeroed in on it like a torpedo. I wanted to laugh or cry. It was the exact same feeling as the liquor store. See a door, aim straight for it, no thought of handles or locks, or the fact that glass is solid and my skull is not. We accelerated across the square. The fish market and yacht club and late-night cleaning crew dissolved into peripheral smears. The only real thing was that door and the faint, shifting reflection of the harbor in it. I slammed into it with bone-jarring force. The impact sent a blast of pain up my arms through my ribs. My forehead bounced off the glass. For a second, I honestly thought the whole thing might just rip out of its frame and we'd plunge into the lobby in a shower of shards. The door shuddered. A little spiderweb of cracks bloomed where my shoulder hit. But it held. I ricocheted backward, stumbled, hit the ground. Bright lights above me turned into spinning halos. The world doubled, tripled. I blinked against a wash of tears, and iodine sting as fresh blood ran into my eyes. My body rolled over and pushed itself up, fingers sliding on the polished stone tiles of the square. Somewhere inside my chest, something grated painfully when I breathed. Getting up felt wrong. It felt impossible. But the muscles did it anyway, like they were reading from a script. Through the glass, I saw a figure moving, shifting shadows resolving into a man in a dark uniform hurrying toward the door. He was frowning. His mouth moved. "What the hell is wrong with you, man?" His voice came through, distorted by the glass and my ringing ears. "Jesus, you're covered in blood." He raised a hand toward me, palm up. The other stayed back. Near his belt were a radio and maybe some other stuff hung in silhouette. For whoever or whatever had hold of me, that was enough. The moment the security guard got close enough to push the bar and crack the door, my body moved. The glass door opened maybe 20 centimeters, just enough for him to stick his head out and repeat himself. "You need to get the hell off." I lunged. I hit the gap between door and frame like a fucking battering ram. The guard hadn't braced. He'd expected a drunk stumble, not a full-force sprint. The door flew open, smacking into the inside stop with a bang. The guard went flying backward, arms pinwheeling. His radio screeched as it smacked the ground. We went in together. The lobby was big and cold and full of echoes. Marble floor, chrome pillars, an enormous dark aquarium built into one wall. filled with slowly drifting jellyfish lit from below. Their ghostly bodies pulsed in pale blue, tentacles floating like torn lace. The guard hit the floor and slid. I stumbled, regained footing, and lunged at him. If I'd been in control, maybe I would have stopped. Maybe I would have thrown my hands up and screamed an apology and begged for help. Instead, my knees dropped on his chest, pinning him, and my hands shot toward his face. More specifically, his forehead. He yelled, tried to twist away, but his back skidded on polished stone. His hands came up, grabbing my wrists. We struggled, his boots squeaking against the floor. Inside, I was begging, not for my life, for his. Whatever this was, I knew deep down it was transferable. The words, "It's yours now," were still burning in my nerves. I didn't want to do that to him, to anybody, but my hands pushed, inch by inch, wrists trembling with effort. His forearms bulged as he tried to keep them away. His eyes were wide, pupils blown. "That's enough," he spat, grunting with the strain. "Get off, you maniac, I'll..." Then the elevator chimed. Both our heads snapped toward the sound. The chrome doors slid open with a soft, expensive hiss, revealing an older man in a white lab coat, hair thin and silver, clutching a black briefcase. He stepped out, took in the scene in one frozen second. The bloody barefoot man straddling his security guard on the lobby floor, and stopped dead. His face went chalk white. My body saw him. Everything inside me sharpened. The grip on the guard's wrist slackened. My hands just let go. My weight shifted without my say-so. I rose to my feet in a weirdly smooth motion, like the muscles had already plotted out the shortest path. The guard scrambled away on his elbows, gasping. He reached for his radio, fingers fumbling. I didn't even glance down. I bolted for the elevator. The old man staggered backward with a panicked little noise and mashed his hand against the button panel. The doors began to close as I sprinted across the marble. For a second, I thought I'd make it. My hand shot out, fingers stretching. The door sealed with a soft thunk. My hand smacked solid metal. Pain jolted up my arm. On the little screen above the elevator, numbers ticked upward. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No pause. Straight to 6. Without hesitation, without even checking the other elevator bank, my body whipped around and sprinted for the stairwell door at the side of the lobby. The push bar hit the wall with a bang as I shoved through. The stairwell smelled like steel and dust and faint chlorinated water from fire sprinklers. Emergency lights painted everything a sickly yellow. My feet hammered on the steps, each one a jolt through my battered frame. Blood left sticky half-moons on the concrete. My lungs should have been shredded by then. My thigh throbbed from where I'd smashed into concrete near the harbor wall. My ribs burned, but whatever owned my muscles treated pain as background noise. I know this part should blur. It should smear into an impressionistic mess of steps and landings and breath. But I remember each floor number painted on the cinder block as I tore past. 2, 3, 4, 5. By the time I hit the landing for the 6th, my vision tunneled. A low, insistent ringing had joined the sonar ping in my skull. The two sounds braided together into something that made my stomach churn. The door to the 6th floor was heavy, metal, painted institutional gray. It had no external handle, just a flat plate. Access from the stairwell was by key card only. I saw the reader box glowing red. My shoulder hit the door like it owed me money. It didn't budge. My face smashed against cold metal. Fresh blood smeared across the paint. My nose gave with a cartilage crunch. Warmth gushed down over my lips. The door remained solid and indifferent. My body stepped back, gathered itself, and slammed forward again. Bone rattled. The door groaned in its frame. I'll bolt Simvertsvanket. But it held. I prepared. I say that like I had a choice to hit it a 3rd time. That was when the lock clicked. The door swung inward abruptly. I didn't have time to react. I barreled through and crashed full-on into a wheeled cart loaded with cleaning supplies. Mops, buckets, spray bottles, a yellow caution wet floor sign. Everything exploded in all directions. The guy pushing the cart let out a yell and went down under the avalanche. He was maybe mid-20s in a blue janitor's polo. His eyes were wide and dark, the whites shining against brown skin. He slammed into the wall, banged his head, slid to the tiles. A plastic bucket clattered away across the floor, leaving a smear of dirty water. I tripped over the fallen cart, rolled, banged my elbow, then came up in a clumsy trot. My body didn't even glance at the kid sprawled on the ground. It just reset its course. Down the hallway. The air on the 6th floor was cooler, drier. The lighting harsher. The walls were glass on one side, revealing rooms of stainless steel and tanks and racks of instruments. I caught glimpses of softly bubbling water in cylindrical columns, cables thick as wrists feeding into the walls, monitors showing waveforms and pulsing graphs. This wasn't just an office floor. It was some sort of lab. At the far end of the corridor, near a door with more locks than a bank vault, stood the old man in the lab coat. He was halfway turned toward another security guard, this one in a heavier uniform with a holstered pistol on his hip. They were arguing. The old man's hands fluttered toward the door. The guard jaw was set in a way that said, "Not tonight. Doctor, I don't care who you are." The moment my body saw them, it surged. "Stop right there," the guard barked, drawing his weapon in one smooth, practiced motion. The muzzle pointed straight at my chest. Inside, I yelled, "Stop. For the love of God, stop." My legs didn't stop. They pumped harder. I felt the muscles in my thighs burn. The sonar in my head hit a new intensity, faster, louder. "Ping, ping, ping, ping. Stop," the guard shouted again. His arms stiffened. He was trained. He'd probably rehearsed this in drills. Shout, warn, shoot to disable. The gunshot was louder than anything in that building deserved to be. The confined hallway turned it into a single, brutal crack. The tile right in front of me shattered, chips smarting against my shins. A warning shot. I realized the only mercy I was going to get. I knew then, in the shrill echo of it, that if I was going to die, it would be in the next 3 steps. I took them anyway, or rather, my body did. The guard's eyes flickered. Disbelief crossed his face, just for a second, as a bloody, barefoot, half-naked man with one boot and a broken nose kept sprinting straight at his gun. The second shot came almost immediately. The impact felt like being stabbed with a white-hot crowbar. Something tore through my thigh. My leg buckled, went weirdly numb for a fraction of a second, then came back online. The muscle seized, then powered through. I screamed internally from that place behind the glass. The sound didn't make it to my mouth. The guard froze. He didn't have time to fire a third time before my body crashed into him. We hit the corridor wall with a fleshy smack. His head bounced off the safety glass. The gun flew from his hand and skittered across the floor. His breath whooshed out in a grunt. We both slumped, tangled. I rolled off him, more because my momentum carried me than anything. He tried to grab my ankle. My heel smashed into his wrist. Something cracked. He swore, clutching his arm. My body was already up again, turning. The old man in the lab coat, his ID badge swung on a lanyard, catching the fluorescent light. I saw the name in blurred letters. Gallo. He backed up a few steps. His hands shook as they fumbled with a key card at another reader. The door behind him blinked green, then red, as if scolding him. His eyes were not on the light, though. They were on me. They were full of a kind of horror that had nothing to do with my appearance and everything to do with recognition. "No, no, no," he whispered, a mantra, backing away from the door he just failed to open. "Please don't." My body closed the distance in 3 limping strides. I hit him around the waist and drove him backward. He stumbled and went down hard, the back of his head cracking against the tile. The briefcase flew from his hand, clattering open, spilling papers and a small black device with a cluster of LEDs that blinked once, like an eye opening. I straddled him. He raised his hands half-heartedly, like someone trying to ward off rain rather than blows. "Please," he gasped, "don't hurt me. I didn't know this would happen to you. I swear to you, I didn't know." To me, The phrase snagged in my mind like a hook. It implied connection, history, some experiment or decision that had led directly to me being here, on top of him, controlled by whatever he'd helped create. If I'd had my body for even 1 second, I'd have grabbed his collar and shaken answers out of him. As it was, my hands had a single goal. My right arm went up, hand opening. I felt every tendon in that limb, every fiber, every grain of skin in the palm. My fingers trembled, then steadied. The sonar ping in my head rose to a constant, grinding note. Drawn by invisible lines, my hand came down toward his forehead. "No," the old man sobbed. "Please, I—" My palm met his skin. Warm, fragile, the faint bump of vein. "It's yours now," my mouth said. I heard my voice. I felt my own tongue shape the words. But they weren't mine. They came out in a cadence that wasn't how I talk, dipped in an accent that wasn't from anywhere I knew. Too flat, too calm. The instant my skin finished forming that last consonant, something let go. It was like 1,000 tiny hooks that had been sunk into the inside of my head, all at once released and snapped free. The pressure behind my eyes vanished. The grinding sonar note cut off mid-ping. My arm collapsed, dead weight. My whole body followed. I slipped sideways off the old man and hit the floor like someone had just cut my strings. Pain rolled over me in a wave I was not ready for. It was all there, all at once, no filters. My leg screamed where the bullet had gone through. My ribs snarled with every breath. My nose throbbed. My shoulder burned. My skin, where it had been scraped and torn and slammed, lit up like I'd been dipped in fire. I couldn't even tell what hurt worst. It all blurred into this massive, roaring ache. But I was in it. I was in my own body again. I lay face down on the cold tile, cheek in a puddle of mingled blood and cleaning fluid from the spilled cart. The chemical tang stung my nostrils, mixing with the iron of my own blood. Overhead, the lights buzzed too bright. Somewhere near my boot, water dripped from a mop head, rhythmic. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop landed right next to my ear and sounded like a deep sonar ping shrunk down, mocking me. Dr. Jellin, are you okay?" The guard's voice. It wobbled, trying to hold onto professionalism and sliding toward panic. I couldn't see the guard from where I lay, but I watched the doctor in the arc of my peripheral vision. He wasn't crying anymore. He wasn't begging. He was still. He lay there for a second with his eyes wide open, staring up at the ceiling. Then, very slowly, he rolled on his side and pushed himself upright. There was a smear of my handprint on his forehead, reddening now as his own blood welled up from where I'd pressed too hard. His hair was mussed, his lab coat wrinkled. He did not look at me. He didn't look at the security guard either, who had managed to scramble to his knees. One arm hanging limp, gun nowhere in sight. The doctor got to his feet with mechanical precision. "Doctor," the guard said again. "Dr. Jellin, should I call?" The old man turned away from both of us and walked calmly to the wall. His shoes left faint, wet footprints on the tile. His right hand rose and braced against the plaster for balance. And then he drove his forehead into the wall. The sound was dull and awful. "Hey," the guard shouted, suddenly more scared of his boss than of me. "Doctor, what the hell are you?" Jellin's head bounced back from the impact. A small smear of red bloomed on the off-white paint. His knees wobbled for a second. Then he did it again. He slammed his skull into the wall harder this time. The smack was sharper, a cracking sound mingling with the thud. Blood spattered outward, streaking down in thin lines. "Stop!" The guard lurched to his feet, reaching out with his good arm. "Sir, you have to stop." The doctor didn't stop. He pulled back and smashed his head forward over and over, each blow more savage than the last. The wall shuddered with them. Blood ran down his face in ribbons, into his eyes, his ears. His lab coat, soaked with red, blooming outward like some horrible flower. He made no sound. No grunt, no cry. Just breathe in, slam, rebound. Breathe in, slam. The guard grabbed him around the shoulders, tried to pull him back. For a moment, the doctor's weight gave and they staggered together, awkward. Then some impossible strength jerked through Jellen's body. He tore himself out of the guard's grip with a twist that made the younger man yelp. Stepping forward, the doctor planted his hand against the wall again and leaned into the next strike like a man taking a deep dive. The right side of his skull caved slightly when it hit. You could hear it, a wet crunch, different from the previous hits. Blood and something pale splashed the wall. The guard recoiled in shock, hand to his mouth. I turned my face away, nausea rolling through my battered gut. The lights flickered overhead, or maybe that was just my vision going. "Jesus Christ," the guard whispered, voice shaking. His radio crackled, dangling from his shoulder. He fumbled for it with blood-slick fingers. We need emergency. We need everyone up here now, code." The words blurred as darkness crept in from the edges of my sight. My consciousness, newly returned, fought to stay afloat. My last clear image was the bloody streaks on the sterile lab wall, slowly sliding downward as water kept dripping from the mop head next to my ear. Drip, 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 out of rhythm now, mocking the sonar beats that had driven me like a puppet. Then the black closed in again, and I let go. Coming back felt like breaking the surface after being held under way too long. 1 second there was nothing. The next, I shot up into myself with a raw, animal panic, lungs already burning even though I was breathing. I tried to sit bolt upright, and my whole body screamed at once. Everything from my toes to my teeth lit up with pain. A hard weight pinned my shoulder. "Easy," a voice said. "Male. Tired. Easy, Jeremy. Don't move. You're in the hospital." I blinked against light that felt like someone had dragged a welding torch across my retinas. White ceiling tiles, fine cracks spidering through old paint. A metal air duct with condensation beating along the bottom. One fat drop hanging there, trembling. For a second, I honestly thought I was back in that stairwell. The drop of water swelled, fell, hit the floor with a tiny sound. Drip! My whole body flinched. "Heart rate's up," another voice said. Female this time, crisp. "Jeremy, can you hear me? You're at St. Helena Maritime. You've had surgery. You were brought in from the Thalassus Center incident. You need to stay still." The words bobbed past me like buoys in rough water. I understood all of them, but they barely meant anything. My mouth was dry as sand. My throat tasted like old pennies and salt. I tried to talk, and what came out sounded like I'd swallowed a mouthful of harbor mud. Sandiara. It hurt to even form her name. My tongue felt enormous, clumsy. "Your wife's been informed," the woman said. "She's on her way. But right now we need to keep you calm, okay?" Somewhere far off, a foghorn moaned. Maybe real, maybe just my brain replaying old sounds of comfort itself. Under it, a soft, regular beeping from machines hooked up to me. Beep, beep, beep. Just a heart monitor. Still, every time it sounded, some small part of me braced for that other noise. That low, bone-deep ping from inside my skull. It didn't come. That realization hit harder than any painkiller. For a moment, relief cut through everything. It was gone. Whatever had been driving me like a half-sunk ship with its engines locked at full ahead, it wasn't there anymore. Then the relief twisted. Because if it wasn't in me, it was somewhere. I tried again to lift my head, ignoring the way my leg felt like someone had poured liquid fire through it. Ow, my voice caught. "How long?" "Couple of days," the male voice said. "Off and on. Mostly off. We stabilized your leg and ribs that first night. You gave us all a scare, pal." I turned my head a fraction. Enough to see him, a stocky nurse in blue scrubs with salt and pepper hair and the kind of permanent half-stubble guys get when they work long shifts. Behind him, through a grimy window, the harbor glowed. I could actually see the water, black, flat, dotted with the reflections of ships at anchor. One of the hospital wings literally jutted out over the bay. You could see the pylons going straight into the dark. They'd stuck me in a room where I could see exactly what I wanted never to see again. Someone jostled a drip stand. Plastic bags rustled. Saline hissed. The smell of disinfectant tried and failed to cover the underlying tang of brine and rust that clung to everything in this place. "You've had a lot of visitors, Jeremy," the nurse went on. "Doctors, police, marshals from the Coast Guard, people in suits. We've been holding them back until you were properly conscious," but he glanced at the female doctor. "You know, they're not going to wait long." She sighed. "They already haven't," she said. "But we'll give him an hour. Then they can have him in short intervals. Under supervision. Short intervals. Like I was a hostage being bargained over." I tried to swallow. Half of it went down the wrong way. I coughed and nearly blacked out from the pain that rolled through my chest. Okay. The nurse patted my shoulder. "Breathe slow. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You ever been diving?" "Yeah," I croaked. "Same thing. Slow it down. You're not on a sprint anymore." He had no idea how much I needed to hear that. They fussed over me for a while longer, checking lines and monitors, murmuring stuff to each other. At some point, a different nurse came in and adjusted the bed a bit so I wasn't flat on my back. The movement made everything ache, but at least I didn't feel like I was drowning in my own body. When they finally cleared out, the room got weirdly loud with all the small sounds. The distant slosh of waves against pilings directly under the building. The muffled thud of helicopter rotors from the helipad on the roof. Someone rolling a gurney down a corridor. And underneath it all, a drip from somewhere behind my head. The soft, steady gurgle of a pipe, probably part of the seawater intake system St. Helena used for its cooling. The entire hospital breathed through those pipes, sucking in and pushing out the bay all day and night. I focused on the beeping monitor and tried not to lose my mind. An hour dragged past like an outgoing tide. Then they started coming. First, it was the hospital staff, a trauma surgeon who explained, in a clipped, professional tone, that the bullet had punched clean through my thigh and missed the femur by millimeters. That my ribs were cracked, but not shattered. That my head injuries were moderate, but no sign of permanent brain damage. He said the word miracle twice and immediately walked it back with a little laugh, like he'd sworn in church. Next came two uniformed officers from city police, their badges shining, notepads ready. One had damp sleeves like he'd just come in from patrol. He smelled like rain and car exhaust. They asked me to confirm my name, address, date of birth, that I was the same Jeremy Hales whose boat was tied up in berth C-12. Then they wanted the story. All of it. From the minute I'd cracked that beer on the stern to the moment I'd blacked out on Thalas's 6th floor. I told them. My voice sounded wrong in my own ears. Hoarse, thin, but once I started, the words just came. Maybe I'd been holding them in without realizing. I told them about the scream in the harbor, the barefoot man, how he'd run into doors like he didn't see them, how he'd been bleeding and covered in mud and seaweed, how he'd crashed onto my boat and gone straight for my face like he was on rails. One cop, the younger one, scribbled as fast as he could. The older just watched me, eyes narrowed. When I got to smashing the beer bottle over the guy's head, he flinched a little. "Look, I wasn't trying to kill him," I said. It was like he wasn't registering anything. I thought he was on something. Bath salts, or I don't know. I just wanted to get him off my family. "And your wife? Your daughter?" The older cop asked. "They were on the vessel at the time?" "Yes, below deck. My wife saw him. She saw me fighting him. She heard him say it." "Say what?" My mouth felt like it was full of cotton. "When he touched me," I said. He put his hand on my forehead, and he said, "It's yours now." The younger cop stopped writing, pen hovering. "And then," the older one said. Then I swallowed. The memory of that switch, of my body slipping out from under me, made my heart stutter. The monitor responded with a warning beep beep. Then it was like something slid into me. Like someone else grabbed the controls and shoved me into the back seat. The older cop didn't write anything. He just watched my face. I told them about the harbor wall, the fall, the water smashing the breath out of me. Waking up on the causeway, running along the edge of all that black, cold sea, the city lights, almost getting hit by traffic, punching the liquor store door, sprinting through the square and straight into Thalas's glass. I described the jellyfish wall in the lobby because for some reason that had stuck with me like a photograph. Those slow, pulsing shapes behind glass, minding their own business, completely unaware that people were smashing into each other 3 meters away. I told them about the elevator, the numbers ticking up, the lab floor, the gunshots, the way my leg had tried to fold when the bullet went through, and how something in me had refused to let it. When I described Dr. Jelen, the younger cop's pen started moving fast again. And then he said he didn't know this would happen to me. I finished. But I don't think he was lying. I think he'd done something. He just didn't expect it to jump like that. Not like that. Not into me. And then you say you touched his forehead, the older cop said carefully. Whoever made my hand do it, I shot back. Irritation flared for a second, hot and useless. I didn't want to. I was trying not to. I was screaming at myself to stop. And you said the same phrase. It came out of my mouth, I said. But it wasn't mine. It's yours now, he repeated quietly. I stared at the harbor outside. A tugboat moved slowly across the window's slice of world, pushing a barge piled with something covered in tarps. Its wake rippled out in gentle V's that bumped against the hospital pylons. Yeah, I said. That. They exchanged a glance. How many drinks did you have last night before this started? The younger one asked. I laughed, or tried to. It came out like a bark and hurt my ribs. Seriously? 1 beer. 1. Ask my wife. Ask the guys on the dock. They have cameras everywhere down there. You think I ran from my boat to that building on a fucking bender? Hey, no need to get aggressive, he said, but his voice softened a little. The older one cleared his throat. We've already pulled Marina's CCTV, he said. We're still going through Thalas's security feeds. But from what we've seen so far, your story holds up more than it should. More than it should? He stood, smoothing his uniform. Mr. Hales, we've got you on 3 different cameras along the harbor. You do not look drunk. You do not look in control either. We're going to verify everything you've told us. For your sake, I hope the rest matches too. He gave me a grim kind of nod and left. The younger one muttered a quick, thanks for your time, and hurried after him. They were the first wave. They weren't the last. Over the next 2 days, the room turned into a revolving door. Some came in uniforms. City cops, harbor police, Coast Guard investigators with little gold shields on their belts. A pair of guys in dark suits who didn't say what agency they were with but flashed IDs too fast for me to catch the letters. A woman in a navy blazer with a Thalassa Center badge who insisted she was just here in a victim liaison capacity, but whose questions were sharper than that. Every one of them wanted the same thing, the story, start to finish. Always the same, please, Mr. Hales, we need you to be consistent. Every time I'd finish, they'd leave with more questions in their eyes than answers in their notebooks. The hospital people were no better, just different. Neurologists with soft hands who poked at my pupils and asked if I'd ever had seizures. Psychiatrists who leaned forward with concerned expressions and asked me if I heard voices, if I'd had any intrusive thoughts before the incident. One of them tried to float the word psychogenic at me, like the idea that my brain had invented this whole thing to cope with stress. Look, I said at one point, more tired than angry, staring at the tube feeding saline into my wrist. When you dissect whatever's left of Dr. Jelen's head, why don't you tell me if that looked psychogenic to you? That shut him up for a minute. Through all of it, the sea was always there. Even in a room as clean and controlled as this, it seeped in. The window fogged slightly at the edges at night from the temperature difference. Tiny drops of condensation gathering and racing each other down the glass. The air vents rattled when a swell hit the hospital pilings just right. The pipes in the walls sometimes gurgled as they cycled seawater through heat exchangers. Every once in a while, a gull screamed right outside like a drowning baby. I never got away from the water. Not really. They kept Sandra away the first day. For your own good, they said. We don't want him overstimulated, they said. I imagined her tearing strips off someone at the nurse's station, demanding to see me. She'd always been the calm one, but when it came to trying to keep her away from family, good luck. When she finally did come in, late afternoon of the second day, She looked like she'd spent the last 48 hours at the bottom of the harbor and only just been dragged up. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. There were dark circles under her eyes. She wore the same old green hoodie she'd had on when she'd been reading to Lily. The hoodie was stained at the cuff with something that might have been soup or might have been the dried edge of a blood smear. She stood in the doorway for a second, clutching the frame with one hand, as if she was afraid the floor might move. "San," I said. It came out rough, but it was a word. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and leaned over me, careful of the tubes, arms wrapped around my shoulders and neck as best she could. I felt her shake against me, felt dampness seep through the gown on my shoulder. "You stupid asshole," she whispered into my ear. "You stupid, stupid asshole." "I know," I said. "I know." She pulled back, swiping her eyes with her sleeve. "They wouldn't let me see you," she said. "First they said you were sedated. Then they said there were agencies. They needed to talk to you first. Like I'm some random. Like I'm not your wife." "You tell him that?" "Loud," she said. A tiny smile flickered, then died. "Lily's with my sister. Jeremy, she saw him. The man who came on the boat. She keeps saying the red man from the water." My stomach flipped. "Is she okay?" "Physically? Yeah. Emotionally? I don't know. She's 6. She thinks it was a nightmare 1 second, and then she'll suddenly remember something real and ask if the red man is going to come back." I didn't know what to tell her. "Tell her no," I said. It came out too fast, too hard. "Tell her he's gone. They said he's dead, right?" Her eyes flicked to the window, then back. "They said he didn't make it," she whispered. "The one who attacked you. He died on your deck while they were bringing you in. They're doing tests. They asked me if I could think of any reason he'd run straight from a flooded psychiatric unit into the harbor and then onto our boat." "And what? Didn't they tell you?" She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Apparently he escaped from the mental health wing at Harborview 3 hours before he hit our dock. They thought he just slipped out of bed and gone missing on the grounds. Security footage shows him walking straight out, not even trying to hide it. Then they pick him up again where the parking lot meets the inlet. He just jumps in. I pictured it. A man in shredded pajama pants, stepping calmly off a concrete edge into black water. No hositashchen, no splash of panic. He must have been carrying it. Whatever it was, in his head, in his nerves. And the water, the harbor, had been its highway. "Jesus," I muttered. "Yeah," she said. "Jesus." We sat in silence for a minute, listening to the waves slap against the pylons, the monitors beeping, someone shouting orders down the hall. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and sea and burnt coffee, all mixed into a scent I was pretty sure I'd associate with dread for the rest of my life. "I told them I didn't see everything in the cabin," she said eventually. "I was trying to keep Lily back, but I saw him touch you, saw you change. Like a light went off behind your eyes and another one turned on." "Well, I didn't like." "Thanks," I said weakly. She shot me a look. "Don't. You know what I mean." She reached out and squeezed my hand, careful of the 4. Her fingers were cold. "You weren't there anymore. Not all the way. It scared me worse than the blood." "Me too," I whispered. She opened her mouth to say something else, but a soft knock at the door cut her off. A hospital admin type in a blazer poked her head in and gave Sandra an apologetic grimace. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hales," she said. "We need to take Mr. Hales down for some imaging. You can wait in the family room." "For how long?" Sandra snapped. "Half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. You said that this morning." "And we meant it," the woman said, in that gentle but firm tone people use when they're trying to herd angry relatives without getting bitten. "But there were urgent consultations. I promise this won't be as long." Sandra sighed. "Fine," she muttered. She leaned down, kissed my forehead, then my cheek. "Don't go running any marathons while I'm gone, okay?" she whispered. "Only laps in the pool," I said. She gave me a look that was almost a smile, and then she was gone, the doors swinging shut behind her with a soft whoosh. They'd take me for imaging. Down long corridors where the floor shook faintly whenever a heavy wave hit the foundations, past windows that looked directly onto the gray chop of the bay. At one point, the tech pushing my bed joked, "Whole place sounds like an old ship in a storm, huh?" And I almost threw up on him. The scan itself was a blur of thumping magnets and claustrophobia. Inside the machine, eyes closed, all I could think about was being inside a torpedo tube. The steady, mechanical thuds and whining fields felt like echoes of that internal sonar that had been driving me. I kept waiting to feel something tug at me. Some echo, some residue. Nothing. Just my own scared breathing and a muffled whoosh of blood in my ears. By the time they wheeled me back up to the room, it was evening. The sky outside the window had gone from washed-out gray to dark blue. Harbor lights pricked on one by one. A drizzle had started, making the surface of the bay shiver. Sandra wasn't back yet. Maybe they'd lied about the 45 minutes. Maybe someone in a suit had cornered her in a hall. The nurse fixed my lines, scribbled something on a chart, and left. For the first time since I'd properly woken up, the room was empty. Just me, the machines, the faint noises of the sea all around. I lay there, staring at the water through the glass. Every so often, a random thought surfaced. Like, did they ever find that woman who screamed? Did she belong to the man who'd come out of the harbor? Was she a nurse shouting after him as he ran? Or someone on the shore who'd seen something I missed? Or how many other people had this thing touched before it got to me? How far had it traveled through this little coastal town already, jumping from forehead to forehead like a parasite? Or why the hell had it picked that building, that doctor? The name on his badge had burned into my brain. Jelen. I sounded it out in my head, rolling it around like I could squeeze answers out of the syllables if I just thought about them hard enough. Somewhere down the hall, a door banged. Footsteps approached. Turned away. Came back. Stopped outside my door. Soft knock. I thought it would be Sandra. I felt my chest loosen a little. "Come in," I said. The man who came in was not my wife. He was younger than me by a few years, maybe early 30s. Dressed in black from neck to ankle. Black jeans, black shirt, black jacket. Not hospital black or police black. Just black. The kind you buy when you don't want your clothes to say anything about you at all. He was bald. Not shaved for a procedure or from illness. Razor smooth by choice. His skull caught the lamplight, threw it back in a soft sheen. The first thing that really hit me about him, though, was the smell. He smelled like cigarette smoke. Not the fresh, sharp smell from someone who just took a drag outside. The deep, stale stink of someone who'd been marinating in it for years. It clung to his clothes, his skin, his breath. Under it, faintly, was another scent. Sea air, damp fabric, the ghost of algae and rope. He shut the door behind him, quiet, like he'd done this 1,000 times. No name tag, no clipboard, no visible ID at all. "Evening," he said. His voice was flat, not friendly, not hostile, just there. "You're not my wife," I said because my brain was tired and my mouth defaulted to stupid. He huffed a tiny laugh through his nose and dragged the visitor's chair a little closer to the bed before sitting. It squealed on the linoleum, the sound like an old boat fender rubbing against a pier. "Sharp observation," he said. "They told me you were still out for the count. Guess they were wrong." "Who's they?" I asked. He ignored the question. Instead, he leaned forward, forearms on his thighs, hands loose between his knees, and looked at me for a long, uncomfortable moment. Empty eyes, I thought for a second. But that wasn't quite right. They were just dark, very dark. The irises were so deep brown, they might as well have been black, the pupils lost inside them. No visible ellos, like staring at two deep holes where light went in and didn't come back. "I need you to tell me what happened," he said, "from the beginning, without leaving anything out, no matter how weird you think it sounds." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Buddy, I've been telling this fucking story on repeat for 2 days," I said. "You can get in line and borrow their notes." "I read their notes," he said. "They cleaned them up, took out the parts they thought were distress responses. I want the parts they took out." There was something about the way he said it flat, simple, like he was asking me to pass the salt, that made me stop. "Who are you?" I asked. He considered the question for a second, then gave a small shrug. "You can think of me as someone who won't tell you you're crazy," he said. "That's the best you're going to get." The monitor next to me ticked out my heart rate. It had crept up again. The man's eyes flicked to it, then back to my face. "If it helps," he added, "I already know more or less what you're going to say. I just need to hear how you say it." That last sentence raised the hairs on my arms. "Yeah," I said. "Then why ask?" "Because I like to be sure," he said. He laced his fingers together and waited. I stared back at him for a long second. Part of me wanted to tell him to fuck off, to yell for a nurse, to call Sandra and have her storm the room again. But there was something in his gaze, a kind of stillness. Not the blank of a bureaucrat who's trying not to care, or the tightness of a detective who's already decided you're lying. Just still, like deep water on a windless day. The people who'd come before him had listened like they were trying to fit my story into boxes they already had labels for. Drunk, psychotic break, adrenaline fugue. This guy looked like he'd brought a different kind of box. So I told him. Again, I pared away some of the boring bits, the same way you do when you retell anything too many times. I didn't bother explaining the layout of the harbor in detail. He'd probably studied aerial photos. I did, however, tell him exactly how the water smelled that night, exactly how the mud felt on the man's feet, how the jellyfish had glowed in their tank, how water had dripped from a mop near my ear while the doctor broke his own head. I told him about the sonar in my skull. That got his full attention. Those dark eyes sharpened, like I'd finally said something on his list. "A sonar pulse," he repeated. "Yeah," I said. "Low, boomy, like a ship's. But inside, I could feel it in my bones." "Before the transfer?" he asked. "Or only after the first contact?" "During," I said slowly, trying to pick the memory apart. When the first guy grabbed me, it hit right then. Like someone turned on an echo sounder in my head. Then it kept going. Faster, louder, the closer I got to that building. To that doctor. "Did it change when you were in the water?" he asked. That was not a question anyone else had asked. I thought back to the fall from the harbor wall. The impact. The black. The splitting return to consciousness running along the causeway. I don't remember it in the water, I admitted, but I was unconscious. I think maybe it shut off to keep from frying my brain while it was rerouting. He made a small sound in his throat, amused or thoughtful, I couldn't tell. So he said, "You feel the pulse. You lose motor control. You run like a maniac across half the town. You transfer it to Jelen. And the moment you do, you're back in the driver's seat." "More or less," I said. "Also, he immediately loses his shit and tries to remodel a wall with his brain." "Details," he said mildly. I felt irritation spike again. "Are you going to tell me what the hell that was?" I asked, because everyone else keeps looking at each other like they've got a gun to their heads every time I mention sonar. Or him. Or that phrase. The phrase, he repeated, like a teacher prompting a student. "It's yours now," I said. The words tasted foul, just saying them. Like some fucked up relay race. He watched me a moment longer. Then he leaned back in the chair with a slow exhale, as if a weight had slid off his shoulders. He murmured, "So it worked after all." I stared at him. Cold moved up my spine. Slow, like a rising tide. "What worked?" I said. It wasn't a question. Not yet. I didn't trust my voice with a full question. He tilted his head slightly, like he was considering how much to say. His gaze flicked, just once, to the window and the slice of dark, restless water beyond it. "What I'm about to tell you," he said, "doesn't leave this room. Not because I'm asking nicely, but because even if you scream it from the top of the lighthouse, everyone will say it's the brain damage talking. So either way, I'm covered." My mouth had gone dry again. I swallowed air. "Who are you?" I asked again, more quietly. "The part that matters," he said, "is that I'm not with Thalassa." He said the name with a little twist of contempt. It fit on him wrong, like a fancy uniform he'd refused to wear. "Your government?" I guessed. He smiled for the first time. It wasn't reassuring. "Pick a 3-letter, he said. "Doesn't matter which." The ocean doesn't stop at our borders, but jurisdiction does, so they've all had their fingers in the pie at some point. Thalassa was supposed to be a way to coordinate that. Jelen was very proud of that part. The international collaboration. My head throbbed. Jelen, ran it? I asked. Insofar as anyone runs something like that, he said. He was a good scientist. Very good. He thought that made him a good shepherd, too. He was wrong. What were they doing? I asked. That building, those labs I saw, tanks, monitors, cables, yes, he said. You saw the public side. Ocean current modeling, subsea pipeline monitoring, cute jellyfish display in the lobby to make donors feel like they're saving the world while they sip canapes. He leaned forward again, elbows on knees. Underneath that, literally underneath that, was the work Jelen shouldn't have been doing. I swallowed. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. Underneath, I repeated. He nodded toward the floor. There's a level below the official basement, he said. Sits half in the bedrock, half in the bay. Some of their equipment is in direct contact with the water at depth. Big, old-fashioned transducers. Not the cute commercial fish finders. The heavy stuff. Military grade. They built themselves a little listening post and then got bored just listening. The room felt smaller. The sea outside seemed to swell, pressing against the glass. What do you mean, bored? I asked. He looked at me like he was checking to see if I was ready for the next step. Imagine, he said slowly, you spend your whole life listening to the ocean and realizing there's more noise in it than there should be. Not whales, not ships, something else. A pattern under the patterns. Jelen thought he'd found a signal, so he stopped treating it like background and started treating it like a message. I thought of the sonar in my head, the way it had felt almost intentional, like someone knocking from outside a hull. He was trying to talk to it, I said. Two-way communication, the man agreed. He thought he could shape outgoing pulses, modulate them, embed information. See if he got a structured response back. See if he could coax whatever it is into something like dialogue. I stared at him. Whatever what is, I whispered. He shrugged. Ocean's a big place, he said, and our species has been dumping sound into it like garbage for a century. Sonar, seismic surveys, shipping noise. If something out there started recognizing patterns in that, if it started recognizing us, why shouldn't it try to answer back when someone finally listens properly? You're saying there's something in the water, I said slowly, and Jelen invited it in. More or less, he said. He opened the door. He was supposed to do it under supervision, with controls, with us watching what he pushed into the water. Instead, he did what a lot of smart old men do when they think time's running out. He cut corners, made a leap too early. He went down there at night, alone, and cranked the gain. And at what? Rode the echo back up. I asked. Into his head? The man in black smiled again. It didn't reach his eyes. That's the problem with sound in water, he said. It doesn't just travel. It penetrates. Flesh, bone, brain. You felt that. You described it very well. For what it's worth, that's the part of your story that convinced me you weren't just spinning some trauma-induced fairy tale. I remembered the first man's hand on my forehead. The way it had felt like someone had taken a pressure washer full of noise and blasted it straight through my skull. Jelen thought he was driving it. The man went on. Thought he could contain it in his own skull. Study it. Nudge it. Maybe even harness it. He didn't anticipate that whatever he let inside him might want to stretch its legs. Something cold crawled behind my ribs. So it left, I said, through the guy from Harborview. Into me. Into him again. Transfer, he said simply. You pass it on, you get your body back. For a while at least. A nasty little chain letter. He'd already had to use it once, for what we could piece together. That's probably how your first visitor acquired his little hitchhiker. I doubt he knew what he was carrying when he went over the hospital wall and into the inlet. And now it's in Jelen, I said. Belma non gist. The man in black's gaze went flat. For as long as there's anything left in there to inhabit, he said, which, given what you did to his frontal bone, won't be long, if it isn't gone already. A flash of guilt surprised me. What I did. I repeated, hearing the edge in my own voice. He amended without missing a beat. What it used your body to do, he said. It picked the old man. Maybe it recognized some residue. Maybe he built a better antenna in his skull, and it likes the reception. I don't know. I'm not about to ask it. He sat back, the chair creaking faintly. The important part, he said, is that you're clean. I stared at him. Clean, I echoed. You feel any pulses now? He asked. Any voices? Any little urges to sprint headfirst into a bulkhead? No, I said. But how the hell would I know? Nobody gave me a manual. He shook his head. After transfer, the host returns to baseline, he said. We've seen that pattern once before. Brain scans might show some edema, some activity in the temporal lobes, but nothing that sticks. Whatever it is, it doesn't lay eggs. It just moves. Once before, I said. So I'm not the first. Not exactly, he said. But you're the first where we gotta watch it step from A to B to C. That's valuable. Valuable. I laughed again, weaker this time. I ran across half the town like a blood-soaked lunatic and almost had a guard killed. But hey, at least somebody got good data. You're alive, he said. Your wife's alive. Your kid's alive. That guard will keep his arm. The janitor will get a concussion payout from a rich institution. Jelen. He let the name hang. Jelen made choices, he said finally. He meddled. He stuck his hands in the deep and stirred. He thought he could invite something from 3 kilometers down to dance around his neurons for a while and then put it back in the box when he was done. He was always going to end up paying for that. I just hoped it wouldn't drag civilians into it before we shut it down. You knew, I said. You knew something was wrong in that building. Not at first, he said. We had suspicions, especially after the first case. Some poor deckhand comes in a port on a trawler, runs full tilt into a bulkhead, then transfers the thing into a harbor cop before the cops put him down. That looked wrong. We started tracing back common denominators. Where had that trawler been? What currents it crossed? What offshore stations it passed? Thalassa, I said. Thalassa, he agreed. We had people watching. We warned Jelen off his side projects. He smiled and nodded and kept right on tuning his toys in the basement. I was on my way to have a stronger conversation when your friend from Harborview decided to douse himself in sea water, pick up the package, and drop it on your deck. So what now? I asked. You just declare it solved because the crazy old man beat his head in? He shrugged, a small, almost graceful lift of one shoulder. We'll flood the lower labs, he said. Fill it all with concrete and rebar. Turn the transducers into artificial reef. Blame it on a structural assessment. People will protest for a while about wasted public funds. Then they'll move on to the next scandal. The ocean will still be there. Whatever's in it will still be there. We'll just be a little more careful about who gets to listen to closely. Maybe you should be more careful about who gets to build brain radios in the first place, I muttered. That's above my pay grade, he said. We sat in silence for a moment. The harbor outside shifted colors as a container ship slid past. Its deck lights lit up like a moving city. The reflection warped across the hospital window, smearing into broken pillars of white and yellow in the black water. So what was all of this? I asked finally, my voice lower, the anger gone out of it. Really, for a moment, something like sympathy flickered across his face. It looked unused, rusty. It doesn't matter, he said. I felt something in me snap a little. Like hell it doesn't, I snapped. There's something in the water that can crawl into people's heads and drive them until they smash themselves into things. That old man tried to talk to it, and somehow I ended up being its Uber. That seems like it matters a fuck ton. He watched me ride it out. The monitor beeped faster. He glanced at it again and waited until it steadied. What matters, he said, once my breathing had slowed a little, is that the transfer worked. And that old man won't be meddling in things he should have stayed out of anymore. The words were almost identical to the neat little sentence I could hear in my head, the one I knew he'd walk away with. So it worked. The transfer worked. The old man won't meddle anymore. I stared at him, every muscle in my face tight. That's it, I said. That's all you're going to give me?" He stood. The chair scraped softly back. He smoothed his jacket out of habit more than necessity. "You got your life back, Mr. Hales," he said. "That's more than a lot of people get when they brush up against this stuff. My advice? Take it. Go home. Move to a nice lake inland if it makes you feel better. Or don't. Whatever lets you sleep. But don't go looking for more. Don't go diving in old data. Don't go back to the Thalassa Center for a tour. Let the ocean be the ocean. Let us worry about the rest." He turned toward the door. "Wait," I said. He paused, hand on the handle, but didn't look back. "What happens if it gets out again?" I asked. "If it finds another way topside. If someone else tries what he did." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Then I hope the next guy it uses runs into someone as stubborn as you before it does too much damage." Not exactly comforting. He opened the door. A blast of slightly colder air slipped into the room from the corridor, carrying with it the faint smell of wet coats and industrial coffee. He stepped out. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't leave a card. He didn't say stay safe or I'm sorry this happened to you. He just walked away, footsteps fading. I almost let him go. Almost. "Hey," I called just before the door swung shut. He stopped. Slowly, he turned his head and looked back at me over his shoulder. His eyes caught the light from the harbor window at a weird angle. For a second, they looked almost reflective, like there was no iris or pupil at all, just black, glassy surfaces. Deep water in miniature. Up close, something about them was wrong. Too still, like there was no surface tension. Like if you leaned in too far, you'd just fall. "Yeah," he said. The question I meant to ask, "Are you sure it's not still in me?" died on my tongue. I realized, all at once, that I didn't actually want the answer. "Nothing," I said. He watched me for half a heartbeat, then flicked his gaze to the window again and back. "Get some rest, Jeremy," he said. "You look like you've been through hell." The door closed behind him with a soft click. I stared at it for a long time. The machines hummed. The monitor beeped. Somewhere in the walls, water gurgled. A drop of condensation let go from the air duct and hit the floor. Drip. I listened for another sound. For a deep, internal ping. For something knocking against the inside of my skull, asking to come back in. Nothing. Just the distant drone of a ship's engines turning over out in the bay, low and constant. The kind of sound you stop hearing if you live near water long enough. I lay back against the pillows, every muscle trembling, and closed my eyes. Sleep came in fits, full of black depths and cold hands and doors under the sea. Every time I jerked awake, the window showed me the harbor in a slightly different mood, fogged, raining, calm, choppy, but always there, always pressed against the glass. They kept me awake, all told, long enough to satisfy themselves I wasn't going to collapse or start sprinting across the ward. Long enough for the bruises to turn yellow and my stitches to itch. Long enough for the story to leak out in half-true whispers before the gag orders came down. By the time they discharged me, the Thalassa Center had temporarily suspended operations for safety upgrades. Press photos showed men in hard hats inspecting foundations that I knew went deeper than the picture frame. There was talk on the docks about structural issues and possible subsidence, about how they should never have built part of it over the water in the first place. Nobody mentioned flooded secret labs. Nobody mentioned buried transducers or concrete poured into rooms where something had once listened back. Nobody mentioned the doctor who'd smashed his own head in. Sandra drove me home. The car smelled like her shampoo and stale fries. Outside, the city slid by, all wet streets and reflections, until it gave way to the familiar muddle of the harbor. When we turned down the road that led to our berth, my hands clenched on my knees so hard my knuckles hurt. "You sure about this?" she asked quietly, eyes on the road. "No," I said, but we went anyway. The boat looked smaller. Boats always do after you've seen them from a hospital bed. It bobbed gently in its slip, white hull streaked with new rust, deck clean. Too clean. Someone had scrubbed away the blood. You never would have known a man had died there, or that I'd stood in that exact spot and lost control of my own body. We walked down the dock, boards creaking. The water between the floats was calm, black-green, barnacles clustered on the pilings like teeth. I stopped halfway, hand on the weathered post, and looked down. The surface reflected a bent version of me. Thinner, paler, stitches on my face and neck thin as fishing line. Behind the reflection, I could see straight down a meter or so, where the harbor dropped off into murk. Bits of trash hung in the water column, a plastic fork, a tangle of fishing line, a crushed can. Beyond that, just shadow. "Don't stare too long," Sandra said softly. "You'll spook yourself." "Too late for that," I said. We climbed aboard. Inside, everything smelled faintly of bleach. Sandra had rehung the cheap curtain to the forward berth. Lily's drawings were still stuck to the fridge, their edges curling. A crayon mermaid with wild hair and a smiling face looked down at me from the cabinet door, her tail drawn in big, excited loops. "It's just us," Sandra said quietly. "No red men, no sonar, no secret agents. Just damp laundry and a bilge pump that needs replacing." "Sounds like bliss," I said. That night, after Lily fell asleep clutching a stuffed dolphin, after Sandra finally stopped pacing and curled against me in our narrow berth, I lay awake listening. The hull creaked softly. Water slapped against it. Lines groaned against cleats. Somewhere nearby, a halyard clinked monotonously against an aluminum mast. Normal harbor sounds. Every now and then, a drop of condensation formed on the underside of the hatch and fell. It hit the floor with a tiny tick. My body still flinched, expecting the old, deep ping that had once answered it. Nothing came. People expect me to say that I can never be near water again, that I moved inland, bought a farmhouse, avoid the sea at all costs. I didn't. Where I live, the ocean is everywhere. In the air, in the pipes, in the jobs. You don't just walk away. You patch the hull, you watch the weather, you say a quiet fuck you to whatever's down there, and you go back out. But I don't dive as deep anymore. And sometimes, when the harbor's especially still at night, and the sound carries just right, I swear I can hear something under the ship traffic and the wind. Not a foghorn, not a passing trawler, just one distant heavy ping. Somewhere out beyond the breakwater. Somewhere deeper than any of us have a right to be. And every time I hear it, I remember a man with black eyes that didn't quite catch the light right, telling me the old man won't be meddling anymore. Like he was talking about a kid breaking a toy, not about someone who'd opened a door under the sea and invited something in. Sometimes, lying there in the dark with the hull creaking and water gurgling under the floor, I wonder if that door ever really closed. And if it didn't, who it's going to use next to knock.